So I'm just interested to know, not to be too like social worky, psychology type stuff. It's just that we gloss over our feelings a lot of time, and it's those points that emote us that are especially important to pay attention to. And so a key question is, why did your Steiner reading prompt strong emotion? Because the answer to that question is, you know, the answer, like the reason why it's important to study this stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we're talking about, so I just started the record. We got Karen's little blurb on there, but we were talking about Steiner's work in my courses and study and the emotional stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But we have Dr. Lenny Thyme, we have Karen Possessky, and Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff for the, what's today? I don't even know. Today
First
is
of
the
December.
the 1st of December, 2019 collab. Um, yeah, so it's all good. So anyway, I'm just going to turn my camera off now. Um, and so my new word is gothnasium because that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm doing physical, mental, spiritual, emotional gymnastics while I'm jamming through, some of this work that I'm, kind of working on. So it's kind of crazy. So I'll have to actually define it. But I have so it's Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and I'll put this in the for you guys for the Wikipedia. And he was like involved with all kinds of science. So we were talking about how we study in kind of Steiner settings. And it's kind of based on Goethean types of work, which are whole brain thinking, left and right hemisphere together. So you use language and symbology and art and, contemplation and lots of different things to bring you into a whole brain setting. So it's not just one side educating. And so I was telling Karen and Lenny about what kind of emotional stuff it responds. And when I was going to college at the Steiner College, I would drive 3 hours, stay there usually like a whole weekend, almost every weekend, 3 weekends out of the month, and then I'd have tons of courses. Sometimes I'd be up there for 3 days, and then like I'd have to drive home after all day, like say a whole phenomenology course one day for 9 hours, biodynamics course for the whole day for 9 hours, and then the next day maybe some nutrition or some other stuff that's like thrown in. And I literally would come home and I would, on the way home back driving, I would cry hysterically. I'd be like, because it was just hands on, and the education process and what it unveiled and the information and the truth, because a lot of the Steiner work is meant to develop you and your abilities, not tell you what it should look like, not tell you how it feels. And so it you respond with all kinds of emotional stuff, especially a lot of the patterns and lies and deceit that you've kind of been thriving on, um, to that point. Anyway, so it says that Goethe uh, was a German writer and statesman. His works include 4 novels, epic and literary poetry, um,
What years
memoirs.
was he alive?
Huh?
What years? Place him in history.
It says he was born August 28th, 1749, which is interesting because that would make him a Virgo. No wonder he was into so many things. Virgo's a researcher. um, and then he died March 1832.
And
And
what years were Steiner?
I don't know. Let me look. Steiner. Steiner was probably, um,
1870 to 1930?
yeah, I think he was poisoned in like 1926, and he was about 50 years of age for sure. But anyway, so when we're dealing with things in Steiner's work and how we're learning and being educated, it's Goethean. And so that's kind of like the principles that we work on. And so phenomenology courses that are taught through Steiner College, which are spiritual science development hands-on, are set up in a very Gothian way. So my new word is Gothnasium. And that's the place that we go to when we learn the truth. We have to go to the Gothnasium.
I like that.
So anyway, but yeah, it provokes so many different kinds of emotions, but this is usually how Steiner's work, even Schellenberger's work, and also a lot of the work when I was studying with Steiner stuff. Biodynamic people were heavily into also Schellenberger's stuff. We incorporate his stuff into especially our water studies and on our farms with the flow forms and things like that. And then we also are heavily into Weston Price, and Weston Price is mind-blowing too. He was like a dentist, and he went around to try to figure out what was going on with people's teeth. And so he did this study of indigenous people like all over the world, photographed their teeth, took notes, monitored their diets, you know, did this huge study and development around chromosomal defects that could be detectable by crooked teeth. And that he also found that indigenous people had straight teeth versus more of the white people because the chromosomal damage was already starting to appear from eating, you know, flour that no longer had any nutrient in it, you know, white products, refined sugar, you know, a lot of these things that, you know, like the English and the French and people love is these white refined pastries and breads, you know, which basically the grain would be the fiber and the nutritional part of the grain would have been removed. So it's kind of interesting. I read this study and it was talking about the Edwardian period. You know, that's kind of like the castle period. And they were talking about how, you know, they'd have so many workers and they were all peasants and they were only allowed bread. That's pretty much all they ate. Even though on these huge estates, they would grow like all kinds of vegetables, there was wild game, you know, all these different things. But the peasants learned how to actually, you know, crack the grain in a way that they were eating bread made from nutrient dense part of the grain and the fiber. So they were getting tons of B vitamins and all these other things, where the people upstairs in the castles only wanted kind of more of the refined flour, which had no nutrient value that was left in it. A lot of the white bread stuff that we eat, white pasta, is all from refinement. And what they said was that this is why a lot, I mean, there was inbreeding, right, in the higher echelons, but the big problem was that they were B deficient because they weren't eating anything that actually had B vitamin in it because they ate only the refined part. So there's a lot of talk, you know, it's like that's why it's good to go get your own grain, you know, at the store, then get a grinder for it, grind it up and make your own bread, because you're going to be getting a lot of B vitamins and things that you can't get from other things that you're eating, and get away from more of the refined. And there was also I forget what time period it is, and I forget what the actual symptomatic disease was, but during the period, I think it was like early 1900s, somewhere in there, you know, people had corn crops too. So people were making their own homemade breads. And about the time where they decided that they were going to add grinders in to towns where it would take the nutrient part off the corn, and then they would just get the pure powder flour that was left. All of a sudden, within a year after these city grinders came in, where you could take your stuff in and have it ground, people started getting all kinds of weird symptoms. They started getting these sores on their bodies that the doctors couldn't cure and all this other stuff. And finally, after about 8 years of this going on, what they found was that these mills were milling the corn so much that it was actually milling off the nutrient part. And so these people were already nutrient depleted, and now the nutrient that they were getting from the corn from doing more of a hard grind is gone. And so now they have all kinds of nutritional deficiencies, and they're getting big open wounds and sores and all kinds of different things. So this is why instead of them going back to milling grain kind of more in a dense way, no, they decide that they're going to start adding things to your bread. So they're going to add, niacin and all of these laboratory non-biological minerals and vitamins to your food instead of just going back to the natural state of the food.
Well, there's a lot of problem nowadays with bleached white flour, and it's almost exactly what you're talking about, but it's been shown to be the cause of a lot of migraine headaches. And I also remember this story about that town in France where the ergot got into the flour, and the whole town was tripping for about a week because ergot is a hallucinogen, and somehow uh, one of the bugs that got into the flour was making ergot in the flour, ERGOT. Very interesting what they
Yeah,
do
I
with
think that ergot is like fungus, isn't it? Fungi.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fungi's are, you have your good, it depends on where your fungi's at. Like if it's a buildup fungi, that's fine. Microbes are the same way, or you got the buildup microbe, or they contained and they're in the building up phase, or they in the breaking down phase. And like when the fungi is in the breaking down phase, where it, attaches onto something like a grain because it's wet, and then it starts to, digest it, then it's kind of in a breakdown phase. So if you ingest that, or it has like a toxic off gassing, and microbes do the same thing in your system. I was trying to see if I could find this. I'm gonna get this in here.
Are fungi really a type of microbe?
Is what?
Is fungus a type of microbe?
Well, everything comes from microbes, right? Because microbe was the first being that was kind of on the planet, that all life kind of comes from. And the other thing too is in almost everything there's a microbial level, right? So in fungi, I'll even look it up. Oh, here it is. It's called the corn. They called it it says for a brief time in the early 20th century, cornmeal was let me go in here. It was plagiaria, which was the nutrient deficiency, which caused how they were milling it, and it was causing all kinds of problems on people. Yeah, so it says plague outbreak was confined to the South, which happened by the only region of the country where people ate large quantities of cornmeal. Yeah, so anyway, it was a lot of talk about that. I'll put that. Excuse me.
Good night.
I know. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's another linky pinky. Okay, so I was gonna look up but I'm pretty sure that everything has, yeah. It says microfungi. Microfungi are fungi. It says eukaryotic organisms such as mold, mildew, and rust, which exhibit tube tip growth, have cell walls composed of chitin, a polymer of looks like some kind of amino acid. Many microfungi species are benign, existing as soil. And for example, anyway, so I'll put that in there. So yeah, so we've got some microfungi, or some fungi are microorganisms. Okay, here we go. Put that link in there.
Well, that makes sense because the microorganism scale being totally alive and totally restricted within a being probably is another analog to human scale. And it wouldn't surprise me if microbes at microbe scale acted like humans do at human scale with diversity of function and forming communities and those sort of tasks.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting thing that doctors don't know. Most healthcare practitioners don't know. I learned this actually from a person who was an immunologist out of the box from Germany who was developing all kinds of interesting things that I was friends with. And so basically, you have your cell, right? Your red blood cell. And it has inside of it, in the core, what we have, 70,000 trillion or something, 50,000 trillion red blood cells at any given time, or cells in general. And so the red blood cell has inside of it microbes, microorganisms. And, you know, I haven't really, because it's something that a lot of people don't understand. So there isn't like a lot of data to, support how many microbes are actually inside one cell. I suspect it's huge amounts.
It's a
um,
function of scale. And as we look at Fibonacci and see how quick scale goes up when you get to larger numbers, it makes sense that at every scale you get to a maximum where there's so much population that it translates to a single entity at the next higher scale.
yeah. So well, anyway, so I don't know how many microbes are in the cell, but what happens is the cell, and this is kind of cool because it kind of goes back to Steiner's work. About organs, let these organs function in a sustainable way. And we create our biodynamic farms as an organ. Our composts are organs, right? We create a membrane around them and they digest, right? And they're self-contained. And then the farm is that way. We plant trees and shrubs and everything around the perimeter of where we'd actually grow the food that are sustainable to nature and our farm. But we create a barrier, and an a membrane around the farm to actually help contain inside the farm, to keep disease out, help to buffer predatory animals, just lots of different reasons why you would do it. So the cell, red cell, when the microbes are inside of it and contained and happy, they're in their positive process. They're composting, but they're in the cell composting. So they're breaking down the stuff in the cell that's not good. And then they, put it back into the cell as something positive and developing, right? Can actually take the bad and turn it into nutrient, just like compost, like in the cell, because it's self-contained. When there's something that happens, like you have an injury, you have a period of time that the brain isn't really communicating with the body, you could be taking Oxycontin or neuron blockers or Xanax or some of these other antidepressants or chemotherapy, or there are a host of all kinds of things that would block the neuron charges from the brain actually talking to the body. And if the brain's not talking to the body, you may be in a coma. Who knows what's going to happen, but you may have had illness. You may have had, like I said, a sudden injury. You may have broken your leg, and so now you have this major inflammatory response in your leg. And each little piece of the inflammatory response you get contributes to a much larger inflammatory response in what I call the blood inflammatory scenario. Because once you hit the blood inflammatory scenario, it's difficult for you to actually get your inflammatory problems under control. So when it hits the blood in the red blood cells and you start to get a major inflammatory system there, autoimmune system disease, lots of things, but age, inflammation causes aging. Inflammation causes, basically, it's the foundation of all disease and pain and degenerative diseases and all kinds of different kinds of problems that you're going to have. But it's when the microbes leave the cell And what happens is the cell collapse starts to collapse. There's nothing actually holding the structure together. The microbes leave, and then the cell no longer holds oxygen. It no longer holds water, and it no longer holds food, which is the metabolic product that those are the products that they are the Kmart shoppers. They like go and pick these stuff up on the cell, and then they go through the body and they deliver it to all of the systems through the fresh blood ways. So when it starts to collapse, I think it's called I think a French word is like roulean or something like that, roulean, where the red cells start to collapse. And then what happens is that because there is no oxygen, and I get this from a lot of people that I work on in my practice, that they have, high levels of pain because they have blood inflammatory disease for whatever reason that has caused it. They have a UTI that wasn't really completely treated. They've got, kidney stones that they don't know about. They have some dental issues they're not dealing with. They have, hidden infections in their sinuses, or, dormant infections in other parts of their body. They've got, like an unclean colon. I mean, all kinds of reasons why you would have blood inflammatory disease. So once the microbes leave, it's so difficult to get them back in. Well, then people's oxygen levels, they go in, the doctor tests them. Oh, your oxygen level is really low. We need to put you on oxygen. Well, that's not the problem. The problem is that the red cell is no longer holding oxygen, right? You got to get to the inflammatory problem, and then usually it's not holding water, and then also it's not delivering food. So it doesn't really matter how many supplements or how much water you drink. It's not going to be helpful to you until you can get the microbes back into the cell. So once the microbes leave, then the red blood cells, they start to coagulate. And so a lot of people can have what's called a red blood cell stroke, but you'll never hear medicine talk about this. Because then they'll open people
Well,
up
they
and they'll
don't
go,
pay any attention to microbe biology.
right. So they'll have a stroke. The person will have a stroke. They'll know that they've had a stroke, and they go in and they look and they go, oh, well, you don't have any plaque. Because, the bottom line is that the plaque wasn't the problem. It was that all the cells were coagulating together, and they were plugging basically the artery, artery blood streams. So there's nothing fresh that's going into the body, and now you have coagulation. And this is why people get to a type of inflammatory disease where they're so tired. They're just exhausted because they can't, nothing's working. They have no delivery systems. Those delivery systems are now clogging the pathways. And this is where exhaustion starts to come in, where people feel like they just can't do anything. They just can't even get out of bed. They don't have any energy. So when the microbes leave, they start going into the breakdown phase. See, in the cell, when they're contained in there, they're doing the breakdown and addition and adding it back in, right? So they're making like a full circle composting machine inside the cell because they're organized, right, in the organ. But once they leave, they're disorganized, right? They don't have a program. So what they start to do is break you down, just like a compost. And so there's no regeneration in that cycle. So they just start running amok all over your body, and they're breaking you down like compost, literally degenerating you and all of your systems. And so you're basically dead man walking, right? You're dying because they're breaking you down at a faster rate than things can be rebuilt. So what happens also too when they leave is there's a lactic acid type byproducts, because they have their fecal matter has to go somewhere, right? So they off gas, or they off byproduct into the body system. If they're organized and they're organized in the cell, then the byproduct gets turned into something that the cell can actually use, right? Can be turned into something positive, can be part of the buildup instead of the destruction. But when it gets in the body, then what happens is it starts to shoot the acid levels up super high in the body. And then on top of it, most people have a very high acid diet, and they have a lot of acid reflux and all these other things. Well, every time that acid shoots up because of the byproduct of the microbes, because they're running amok and they're in breakdown phase, then your body leaches calcium out of your bones to cool your system. And what's interesting is we do this exactly on farms. So we use like calcium, forms of powdered calcium like limestone, to cool like a compost pile that may be too hot. We'll throw some limestone powder in there. It'll help to digest. It instantly cools. It's so good at cooling that I was on this one farm and there was like, I don't know, 5 feet of, the farmer hadn't gotten time. In night beds where we hold animals, we usually put straw in. Every night we'll rebuild straw on the top. And then so by the time you get to taking care of it, it's not hurting the animals, it's not making them sick because you keep applying clean. But sometimes you can have like 5 feet of matted urine and poo-poo, type pins. And so this one farm, I worked 3 weeks on actually, digging it out, getting it in the wheelbarrow, getting it up the hill into a compost pile, and then, putting down new straw. Well, the problem was it was so acidy that as soon as I started to dig out an area, there was tons of bugs and flies. It was like the major attack because it's so hot that it's attracting these beings to come and digest it, to get rid of it, right? Like a dead animal. And so the farmer said, no, just go up to the garage, get the bag of powdered lime. And he said, every time you dig out an area and you can get down to the soil, just, put the powdered lime down and put the fresh straw on. And I'll tell you what, like I was in a swarm, like I was in like this major swarm of, flies and things like that. And as soon as I'd put that lime down, man, it cooled it instantly. And then I'd put the fresh hay over that area, build it up to the same level as the other areas. But it took me 3 weeks to go through that. So the body is like the same. Once, the microbes are out and they're digesting you like a compost, and then their byproduct is lactic acid and other types of not so good acid. Then what happens is that your body, in order to cool your blood, basically, the body has to leach the calcium out of the bones. Then you start to get things like osteoporosis, osteopenia. You start to get, the other part is that because it's such an emergency situation for the body, that the body doesn't really care how much it's leaching out. It doesn't leach out just enough to cool the system. It over leaches. So then you have things like bone spurs, spondylitis. You have all kinds of these other issues in your body because of the calcium that's left kind of floating kind of around that, connects back on, or builds up in a weird way because it's trying to reconnect back into a place where, it can be, instead of, free range around the body. So
I can explain what you're saying in chemistry terms that make sense to me, that might have made sense to Steiner, but wouldn't make sense to other folks.
well, this
But
isn't from Steiner. A lot of this study is from working in a private clinic with this immunologist doctor that was out of the box from Germany. And this is a lot of the stuff that I learned from that person.
you see, I was wondering there, because what you're saying essentially is that human being cells, red blood cells, are fractally related to composts. And that makes total sense. And so, as you were describing the chemistry, I was sitting down here writing notes about what you were saying and starting to question what they've taught us in biology, because the chemistry, as you describe, and we've both observed in compost piles, makes a whole lot more sense than the flawed mechanisms of biochemistry that they've been teaching us and expecting us to believe things like every enzyme has only one function in a cell, and the cell has billions of diverse enzymes, each with their own function. No way, Jose. It has to be common, but the function of an enzyme substitute the word microbe for enzyme, and they're talking correct. They're just using bad terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is like, here it goes back to that language, like the separatization of everything. Farming over here has their language and their terminology and their understanding. And then, if you go to agricultural school, then I'm sure they give you the agricultural dictionary. You go to medicine school, they've got their own ideas and thoughts and their own languaging in their own dictionary. Law, same way. So by the time you get down to the bottom line, nobody really understands each other. And they're all speaking sort of the same language, but they all have different ways that a lot of this vocabulary is defined.
Yeah, it's really bad in certain sciences when one science uses something to mean totally different conceptually than another science. And a lot of terms of chemistry have been bastardized in other ways so that you're never sure if the term means what it's supposed to. But one example would be the term organic, which really just means compounds of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, and almost everything is organic. But they play on that as the word has been redefined so many times that when you say something is organic, it's like saying it's natural. What in the world does natural mean anymore? So,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
semantics are the whole game.
yeah, no, let's see. I was listening to, here, okay, so this is a quote by Goethe, right? A
Mhm.
couple of them. I'll just throw some stuff out there. Correction does much, but encouragement does more. There's another one. It says, knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. And then there's another one. In nature, we never see anything isolated, but everything in connection with something else, which is before it, beside it, under it, and over it. That's exactly what we're saying, right? In nature, we never see anything isolated, but everything in connection with something else, which is before it, beside it, under it, and over it. That's exactly what we're saying. It's all the same.
Yep. And
But
yet
it,
people are isolated into compartments and taught the same thing in different ways, and then spend the rest of their lives arguing over minor details that don't matter and missing the major concepts that really do.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
But
it's just so,
telling us about major concepts that really matter.
yeah, I mean, inflammatory situation really matters. And it's interesting how in farming, it's really solidified, like, I know it's kind of funny, but going in and digging the shit, right? Digging in the shit really helped me to understand ultimately all of these things that I was taught about the body by people out of the box, that initially started teaching me things that mainstream was not teaching me, not in Western medicine, not in alternative medicine, not in nutrition, not in any of these fields. But they started to help teach me things, and the only way that I really could understand it was when I went to biodynamic school and I was on farms, and I really started applying remedies and medicine to soil, and making compost, learning alchemy through compost. And that's when my belief really in that if people get their bodies back into a operating organism and everything in that organism functioning properly, then you could cure anything. And you could, pretty much extend your life a long time. I mean, right now, what we're dealing with, I was listening to mainstream and what they've said in the last 10 years, no, 20 years ago, people were living to, the average age was 80 or more, right?
Hmm.
In the last 10 years, that's downgraded to 65 is the average age
Yeah. And there's two
in
major
America.
reasons for that. One is that people aren't taking the care of themselves at the end of life, but the other is that a lot of young people are getting killed by each other all the time.
Well, and a lot of it's vaccines and the detrimental damage. I mean, if you have damage to your brain, no matter how you got that damage, that brain can't regenerate your body. I mean, like this is what mainstream says. Mainstream says that your body regenerates, right? What is it? 2 to 7 years or something like that. You regrow a whole set of bones, right? Every 6 months, most of your organs regenerate themselves. And there is, conversation and literature on the fact that when, say, your liver regenerates itself every 6 months, rebuilds itself, expands itself, especially when you're young and you're developing, that there won't even be a remainder of one cell left from the old one. Literally rebuilds its whole self from the inside all the way out. Okay, then why do we only can live 100 years at max? Or however max we're living.
Yeah,
If
no,
our
there's a number
bodies
of
are
different things in that model that don't make sense intuitively. And yet you're right. They're telling everybody this from a science perspective, and they're supposed to believe science,
well, but
and they're
I believe
leading
that
them
this
away
is
from it.
true. But the problem is that we damage the brain so that the brain can't actually do its job as the hard drive, communicating through the nerve passages to the organs and getting them to regenerate, which is, they send a signal that go map the DNA blueprint of the liver, bring it back to the liver and regenerate it with that. Well, if you're putting a vaccine into somebody and it's creating a hook on your DNA, then from that point on, your liver, especially the hepatitis vaccine, then your liver is going to regenerate itself with a deficit, which is this hepatitis virus. So it's never going to be able to replicate itself in the purest form from the DNA strand because now the DNA strand is damaged. So you can't live 200 or 300 years, right? So then, you're not taking enough B vitamins to actually help to traffic proper electrical signals and two-way conversation from the brain to the organs. And then now also people have a lot of damage to their spines, and the spines are pinching off nerves to those organs. And the brain will only send signals for so long before it gives up on that area. And then you have 20 years later, you have degeneration of that organ, and then you have cancer in it, or you have like you know, um, with the
Well,
liver.
the one thing in every portion of what she said that is consistent is it all is based in the water. And the biological systems are 70% water for humans, but as you go into organs and that, so much of the structure of a cell is water. And the condition of that water, whether it's happy or sad, uh, polluted or clean, I think we have a real major problem with all our water being redirected towards things that are not productive, and that if you have a clean system that's functioning properly, the water flows a lot better.
Well, but you also have to have the signals, the charges to the water, right? Because even like what Pollock was talking about, the fourth phase of water, and what I really got out of his lecture, let me see if I can find that. Um, in case Karen hasn't seen that or whatever, we'll just put it in a link, and then we can always put these links, into the video chat. Hold on a second, me.
I
Um,
saw that link earlier today, actually. It, for some reason, popped up in one of my stream videos. But he does a TED talk that's pretty good. A
yes,
lot
I'm
of
gonna
what he
add that
says about
here.
water is that if you've got things like calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium dissolved in your water, that's not the easy phase of water that he was talking about. That's solution chemistry. And the easy phase is when it's called exclusion zones, so that everything except water is excluded. And so instead of water being on a ball surrounding an ion and polarized, it instead forms a lattice that's essentially the same type of lattice that carbon can form on a different level. But water is a tenth the size of the organic chemistry. The proteins, enzymes, macromolecules that the body have are hundreds of thousands of times bigger than individual water molecules, and yet the water molecules outweigh everything by a huge amount. And so if we look at everything as living in a water environment where the water is air, even our fetuses live in a water environment until they're born and brought out into the air. So it's humans dealing in air that's different from the rest of biology. And maybe the water plays a lot more significant role than anybody beyond Pollock actually gives it credit for.
Well, and the thing that I got, because Richard gave me Pollock's book. It's like this huge, huge book, because he had a couple copies of it. He kept the signed one, which was fine, but he gave me one of the Pollock books because it was like a $70 book or something like that, because he knows Pollock or whatever. So one of the things that I really got out of the fourth phase of water was that they were talking about the relationship of sunlight in water, and that in primitive times we would have drink water from waterways that would have had heavy minerals and metals and things that we would have gotten into our system that would have helped with the electrical phases, right, in our water, in our chemistry. But he also talked about how the sunlight charged the water that we would be drinking. Well, the same thing in farming. If you're eating food that you're growing in your own yard, your backyard, you're eating food that has a sunlight component that's living in it, right? You have something that has an electrical charge. So I kind of like, you take it to the chemistry, but I take it to like these other processes. But if your brain is sending out electrical charges through nerve passages or however else that it's doing, and this is how it communicates with the rest of the body. Say, sends out a charge to your liver just to see how things are going, and then it helps the liver to remake itself or redevelop itself or heal itself or whatever, the whole processes of the body. And then we're also missing this electrical charge component that the water had because of its movement, right? Its natural movement, plus it's picking up all these minerals and metals. So it has an electrical charge because of the movement as well. And then also the component of sunlight going into the water, which is also charging it, right? And then you're drinking that into your body, or you're eating plants that are directly from the sunlight, and the processes of the plants and their movement also can amplify an electrical charge in the plant, and then the sunlight through the water, and then you have the sunlight going into the plant, and then you're eating that directly after you pick the plant. So in we have mineral deficiencies, metal deficiencies. We have we don't have these electrical charged movements of water and the plant growth that also are an electrical charge, and then we don't have the sunlight that's charging the water either. So it makes it impossible for our brain to have the necessary inclusive in the organism systems to actually send out proper charges, and then to get the data back from the data charge that it's sent out. And then our cells don't have all of the charges that are necessary to do the work, right? Because if we are compost, then even the inside of our body needs to have some kind of relationship with movement. And then the stuff with maps and talking to Mike and Victor, and just about these ideas of how back, when they were very civilized and they used all these different things, even the subtleness of wind and water and all of these other things as free energy, right? So here we go again. We're the same, right? We're probably the same as all of that stuff, but we're no longer anymore getting that stuff into our body, and especially the electrical charges, you know what I mean, that are necessary. So what do you think about that, Lenny?
It makes this whole idea of Kurzweil and Elon Musk and the idea that humans are going to be robotic and essentially depriving us of our mineral nutrients do put us into lines of components in a bigger system that are depleted and only have one mechanism for their own survival. And so it's given me a whole different way of looking at the individual humans in the crowd of all humans. And I've been working on human scale, trying to take chemistry and look at the principles of chemistry and apply them in sociological circumstance. It's one of the things that Karen and I have been talking about for a couple of years now. And a lot of the stuff we've discussed today is meat and potatoes to bringing those two levels together, because essentially the microbe level is a fractal between human scale and water scale that essentially has the same numerics and the same way of functioning. And there's a lot of models that you've described from the microbes compost biology. And we've talked about this before, but now today I can see where humans are just looking at ourselves incorrectly in the whole scheme of things. And for some reason, we've excluded ourselves with nature, declared war, when the nature is really the support system for delivering the metals all across the biological system, so that every plant, every animal, everything composed of water has a proper nutrient balance. So if we look at the balanced chemical equation of what corporations are doing to the world and just stop their pulling in the wrong direction, clean air, clean water, limited pollution is almost certainly an answer to getting everybody feeling better and doing better at how they live.
Well said. The two of you blow me away.
Well, what does that mean?
It's just that you blow me away. Like, just what you know and what you're explaining. And it's just, I listen to you and it's so simple, yet it's not simple. I don't know. It's difficult to explain. It's like you guys know all the intricacies, but it's, and not every human being necessarily needs to know all of those intricacies. Um, but because our culture defaults and relies on leaders to, uh, kind of trickle down quality information about what makes up good water, good nutrients, good farming. Like, people take for granted that there are people like you guys out there that study, understand, know this stuff. And it's just that I think if more people understood or took the time to just listen to you guys summarize this stuff, um, they would get the message at the very least of understanding of how important clean water, clean farming, and clean food production is to overall wellness of, from the cell all the way up to Mother Earth.
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of a funny thing because I'm sure Lenny feels the same way, is that at some point he had to step away from the mainstream. This is how I feel. I had to kind of step away from the mainstream learning. I had learned as much as I could in those areas, and then I had to really step out and really try to find other information out there. So it was like, I've been in private practice, 30 years. And I've learned a lot, but I've had to really hone in. And along the way, I always had people tell me, like, well, it's not like you're working on a doctorate or anything, so why do you even need that information, kind of a thing. It's like, because I want to know, you know what I mean? I want to know what the truth is, and I need to follow the lines of information that can lead me to the truth, because I don't want to tell anyone misinformation. I want to be
And
able to tell them the
Right.
most that I can. And so this is the other thing too. The other day I had somebody say, because I specialize in a type of acupuncture that I've developed, and they're like, well, you can't just develop your own stuff. Well, why can't I just develop my own stuff? This is what Steiner did. This is what Goethe did. This is what Albert
uh,
Einstein did. This is what all these other people did, was that they took information, it wasn't enough information, and they developed whole other pathways of information and knowledge and skills, tools, and techniques. I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just stop at this moment, but we're supposed to keep developing,
Right.
our own work. What is your body of work? And just because
Right.
you're not educated in their system doesn't mean that you don't have a body of work. And so they said, well, you're not licensed to do acupuncture. No, I'm not. But I have been doing it for a super long time, and I've developed my own, structural acupuncture, which I would really love to teach somebody, from doing acupuncture for a long, long time, right? And having been trained by people,
yeah,
because
but
back in the old
you're
days,
missing something totally that we ought to all get, and that is that the leaders are not experts, and the experts, X
Right.
means former, and we know what spurts are. They spit water. And the problem is that we need our Karens to be able to understand what we're saying and translate it into the common language, because the language that we've developed is so technical in what we know, and it doesn't translate anymore. The social
Right.
strata is itself set up to have people not grok the concept. So we've got a political sellout of elite education where all these people we've been taught to trust, doctors, lawyers, scientists, have their own languages. And when they're talking, they're not the language that people understand. So it's a source of flow that's pushing everyone out of the grain who doesn't fit in their patterns. So, whereas the Fibonacci tells us that 60% think one way and 40% think another way, that's not actually true. Those are only two different ways of thinking, the majority and the minority. The third way is really everyone beginning their thinking on their own at human scale and coming up with answers to your own questions, and only consulting people who know after you've already formed your identity about what you know, and then correct the experts so that they can correct other people. That's how progress is really made. We have to
yeah.
develop our own stuff, the skills, tools, and techniques, but then we have to write protocols and bring them to people who can repeat the protocol enough so that the data is reproduced. And once we have people who can use the tools and reproduce the same data, I think we get really, really good results.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is, like, you have to figure out what you're, one of the things is, like, you have to figure out what you're not. Like I tell people, why would I be licensed? I'm not a doctor. Why would I be licensed in acupuncture? I'm not an acupuncturist. These are not things that define me. I have a body of work and a practice, um, that I'm still, working on defining. And I think that you also have to realize, like, sometimes these things put you into a place where they box you in. And so, like, for example, even in law, like when I had to learn common law and I had to start defending myself against the system because they didn't really like where I was headed with my information and work. And they wanted to either box me in, or destroy me. And there's something like in between, which is me defining who I am in my body of work and my understanding, and then trying to go forward to, like, try to educate people in that manner. But one thing is that if we allow them to say within medicine, like, I'm not saying you should go to somebody who's not licensed as a surgeon, okay? That would be wrong, or licensed as a dentist. When somebody starts to actually, take a scalpel and start opening you up, you're probably going to want somebody who knows at least what they're looking for, right? Those kinds of things, emergency healthcare kind of aspects. But when you're dealing with other types of healthcare, there's like over 5,000 different kinds of modalities worldwide. And there's no way that if you want to study multiple ones to create your own body of work, that they'll allow that if there's certain kinds of licensing. So for example, if I was licensed to do acupuncture, well, then they would tell me, well, you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that underneath this licensing. Well, what was the point of the licensing if I'm not allowed to expand, right? If I'm not allowed to grow, if I'm not allowed to create my own work, just because I'm not a doctor. And a lot of doctors, they don't go out and do like what doctors did, hundreds of years ago, like Steiner, where they keep expanding on work, they keep self-developing, they keep contemplating, they keep, thinking about things, studying things to keep growing and growing the body of work and understanding. And I think that's a big problem, is that once people make it to wherever they think they're making it to, getting that doctor's license and practicing medicine, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, and I was going to say I concur. Um, but the thing is, all of those professions do continuing education, but it's like auto assembly line continuing education, mainstream, whatever is pushed by leaders, as you said, Dr. Lenny, that are not experts in those areas, but are trusted that they're pushing the right information down. So we have gotten just that blind trust is the barrier for like people that don't understand and go into in-depth research as you both do. It the it's a barrier because it's intimidating when like you start to try and understand something and in the first sentence you're like, I have no idea what I just read. And so you kind of just like stick with what you know. But to your point, yes, I mean, I designer labels like MD, PhD, those kinds of things. At one point in time, like, yes, it was an identifier of, oh, I've achieved a certain level of knowledge or whatever. But it's really no different than slapping, I don't even know what like maybe Guess designer jeans or something like that. And it's like jeans are jeans. Like the basics, like jeans are jeans, but because we've defined Guess jeans as like fancy and the cool thing to do. Everyone defers to Guess knows exactly how to make jeans, quality jeans, and you just trust that because that's how it's marketed to us, right? So as I always say, conformity is the slowest form of suicide. At that, I'm going to pardon myself. I've got family because of holiday.
Yeah, no,
Because
pardon
this is just after
yourself.
Thanksgiving. Yes, but I love your minds. And, even when I'm silent, I feel like I'm like talking like Dr. Fraser Crane on Frasier. It's like, I'm listening. That's how he always starts his radio broadcast. Like, this is Dr. Fraser Crane. I'm listening.
This is Karen, the social worker ninja, and I'm listening.
I am listening, but like I'm listening to you. And Dr. Lenny, what you said, I was floored when you said that, because I have always found myself in this position of conveying information that, like, once I understand information that's kind of above my head, and I can do it, I just make an effort, that I am able to break it down into parts that people can more easily get. And even if they don't fully understand it, they at least, like, let's say based on today's talk, um, get that, wow. Um, so this isn't just a cliche. It really is important to pay attention to what constitutes clean water and clean food and nutrient production, because uh, that directly impacts the quality of my life and health.
Yeah, it's a role that I like to call the conduit, and it's one of the most important roles in learning experience.
Yeah.
It's the person who can glue everything together by taking the people who are learning, act as sounding boards for them, get them saying it right, and then get back to the expert with the real questions that people have that will push the expert to better answers. But
Yes, and
nobody's an
thank you for
expert in anything. Go ahead.
no, I'm so sorry. Finish your thought.
It all makes sense in the scheme of things that as we play roles, we play different roles in different settings. And so learning what roles are needed and inventing new roles are going to be one of our keys to getting it right.
Yes, and the sweet point there that just instantly like resonated with me is it's bi-directional, because over the time that we have been working together, Dr. Lenny, I have come to realize, do you remember when we first met, like how, like, um, just like, I don't know, I didn't think there was anything that you could potentially learn from me. I mean, like, not at all. But, you know, I now realize that conduit is bi-directional, because not only am I downloading information, I'm kind of uploading information, and I'm like, okay, this is like the frontline direct experience. This is what's going on in like the everyday person's head, and it's just interesting how we have. Even the three of us, I'm getting, I almost feel like this is like a sibling group or something. Like, we just, with, like, we've always known each other, we understand each other, we all have our different niche. But yeah, it is bi-directional. And getting back to uh, what I would call you, like, you guys are like super geniuses, and saying, okay, this is
Don't
how,
sell
like,
yourself short. You're a super genius too.
Yeah, because if you could understand, well, when I first met Lenny, um, like because I
Was
didn't really understand like the language he was speaking. It wasn't until we worked together for 4 months on land, and that I pulled him out of his safety cocoon into farming, and I had him shoveling, and we actually started conversing, and I started to kind of learn the language that he was using. But it took me a while to understand his language, because I think Lenny has probably a 185 IQ, and way higher than mine. But it's his him being
I
like
doubt that.
has
Like, I doubt that. Like you, to me, you two are like super geniuses.
but I like to talk. I loved
But
learning
to
how to
your
talk.
point, thing
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that maybe the overall lesson here is that instead of just trusting information blindly, uh, we have to get back to the basics of connecting one-on-one and
Yeah,
really listening, because everybody has something special. You can learn something from everybody. I don't care what age they are. I don't care how smart they are or not smart or whatever. We have something to learn, but people are distracted. This whatever this society or social, like, scheme that we're in, or maybe even game, um, it has taken people away from
thinking.
what's intuitive and natural. Exactly. And so people like you guys, like, more people have to be willing to listen. It like you said, like it takes effort. Like it took you effort. It takes me effort. I remember when I first started learning about Fibonacci, I was like, what? But no, I made an effort, and it's such rewarding to take that effort. And it's not for the benefit of getting a job or having a title or a degree or getting a big income. It's simply my life is enhanced and improved, and I have a deeper awareness and understanding of something that's fundamental, but and complex, but it is fundamental to living in life. And so I just, everyone on Earth is, you guys make the world a better place. So thank you.
Oh, you make the world a better place too. That's why we have the
Oh,
Think Collab, right? Because I mean, Lenny and I have been talking about re-education system, but we have not been able to secure funding or help or technical support to create like something online where we could have people from all different avenues teaching on one place. So, I mean, that's why the Think Collab came along. So all of us kind of from different arenas could actually come to the Think Collab collaborative on YouTube because it's free and it's where we can start and begin to have these conversations and and hopefully move out because it's so needed to have some place where we could freely give the information that we have. And it would be fair if we could make a little bit of an income as well so that we can continue to kind of do this work and we can continue to educate ourselves and build and develop. And we'll have more and more to offer so that we don't have to work, 2 full-time jobs just to like make ends meet. And then we're not going to be very together, if we're trying to educate or teach. I was talking to this kid. He's a mathematical whiz. He's a barista at a Starbucks, and I was talking to him the other day. And he works at Starbucks and does overtime there, but minimum of 40 hours a week. And that's a pretty intense job. That place gets hopping. And then he works at this place where he tutors. It's called Mathnasium, and he's there 5 days a week, 3 to 4 hours. And then he goes to school full time working on his master's degree in math. I mean, he hopes to get like his PH, someday. And I'm thinking, wow, here is this brilliant kid who's like kind of a math genius, and there's no support for him to make it easy on him to go where he needs to go with his work, right?
right. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to beat him to death and make it so tough on him that he never finishes and never completes it. And then we don't have this brilliant mind changing the world.
Right. Right. So sad. Well, I'm over and out. I
Okay.
wish I could stay longer, but yeah, great collab today. And love everybody. Peace, love, and light, and harmony, and hugs. And yeah, over and out.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, girl.
Bye.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I got 3.5 pages of notes out of today's discussion. And a lot of the notes are because I've been putting in the work going back through the notebooks and have thought about some of these issues. So I think we'll talk more in the future and look at the format of how we do this because it seems to be working well with you, me, and Karen, and then adding an individual person to change the topic and focus us on the topic we're talking about. But I can see areas now that are not in the education system at all that need to be developed on human scale to help people understand that they're not going to get everything right away. It's like every field has their own glossary and dictionary so that the words that we're using don't make sense. But unless we formalize a glossary and a dictionary and have them available so that when somebody uses a word, we know what they're talking about, we still foster those miscommunications at times. I'm worse than you are because I'm further out there in the depth of my cocoon, as you put it. But you're right on in that getting people together has to come after they've done the work on their own, not ahead of time.
Well, I think now it's like they make these people out to be these frontier pioneer doctors, right? But they would have, a lot of them probably wouldn't have gone to school. They would have been forced out. They've been growing food, they've been birthing their own animals, they've been having to do amputations or surgical procedures on their animals. And if not, the people in their town, they also did dentistry of what that they could do, which was, mostly removing of damaged teeth, right, to not cause infection. But I think a lot about frontier doctors and how developed that they would have been, because they would have understood, that our bodies are like compost and soil, right? And what can make the body thrive versus degenerate it. And so I have a lot more respect, which I didn't really have respect. I mean, the whole bleeding thing was asinine, that you would just bleed somebody for no reason. It just, that's the craziest. I mean, and it wasn't a lot of doctors who did these bleeding techniques. A lot of the original frontier prairie or pioneer doctors, they didn't do things like mostly bleeding stuff. They didn't do a lot of surgical procedures unless they were absolutely positively necessary. And so then we had surgeons that were different than the doctors. And early on, there was a huge, fight between them, because the medical doctors didn't really trust the surgical people. And, the surgical people were doing things early on that were lacked ethic and morals. I mean, really. And then the whole bleeding.
So
But these doctors
isn't
would have
that,
been so well rounded
yeah,
for
whereas
nutrition. Yeah, everything.
now they violate ethics and morals right out of the bat and don't even consider them.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, they, when they're going through when they're doing their, their training in hospitals, I mean, they're allowed to kill people. It's part of the thing. Like, oh, we'll just pay the family off. The hospitals are like, we expect you to kill
Yeah.
numerous people while you're doing this. It's like, wow, how could you? And the thing is that what they do is they hold them hostage to these loans. I mean, some of their loans were like $400,000, getting them to the end of the line, which is the internship. And then at the internship, they're like, what, you expect me to kill people? Like, that's okay. I got into this to actually make people better, not kill people. And then how do they back out? They can't back out. They have $400,000 worth of debt. So the thing is like, if their education would have been free, then at that moment where they felt like there was a morality problem, they could have said, I'm out. I'm not gonna, mess somebody up, and I'm not gonna kill somebody, and I'm out. I'm out of this program.
Yeah.
And then
I
the
like,
debt could be erased, instead of them being held hostage
yeah.
and blackmailed over their debt to continue on and become non-human, a
I
monster,
like
basically.
Mona's term, edumacation, because they don't educate you in what's right. They educate you in what's practical for the system to
Yeah,
maintain itself. And
exactly.
we've reached the point where every profession at the cutting edge of their profession knows there's real problems with the professional stature of their organization, but they're bound and committed to it by the loans and the depth of time they've spent promoting those ideals. It's real tough to walk away from something that you really love, but you almost have to do it to get perspective. And then if you come back to it with the perspective, you're so much more effective in your own field than you ever thought you could be when you were just taking what they taught you as the basis of your belief and knowledge.
Yeah.
And so we really need to approach knowledge differently. And it's not what Google says or what Wikipedia says or that, but it's taking the information they provide as a starting point and doing the work yourself and getting informed, and then from a point of informed status, asking the right questions.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like educators should be supported with, um, some kind of income, but I don't think that knowledge should be paid for, or education should be, people should have to pay for that. I really believe that knowledge and education should be a right. And I
I
think if we took that money out of those systems and only paid the, educators a fair, fair rate for their time, then we wouldn't have a lot of these weird problems going on.
I think
Um,
there's a major source of every problem that we have, that as long as we're focused on getting money as a proxy to get other stuff, and that's the only way of going through to get other stuff, that focus on money rewards people who focus on money with more of their time, and money isn't very interesting. You can make a
yeah.
lot of it, but you can't make a lot of it if you're interested in something else, because the people who you rely on for money flow invariably have to flow it into their own pockets.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
I
you
mean, you
have
look at like
to solve
Karen, yeah, like you and me, we left the system a long time ago. And so, would it be nice to have money to pay for a place to live? Obviously, it would be great to have a piece of land that I could actually, do more, as a laboratory, to do more of the study work that I'm doing, to come up, to have more,
it's
information.
putting,
But
you're building the information in your own sphere of mind, so that when the land comes, you'll know exactly what to do with it and be much better off than having gotten it 15 years ago before you had it all thought out.
right.
However,
But I mean, Karen's in the same boat as you and me. We just left the system. Well, I left the system a long, long time ago, but and then you left the system because it couldn't give you what you needed. And you have to walk away from the money. That's the issue. That's the thing that holds you, tethers you. And when Karen left the system a year ago because she realized like the work that she loves to do, and she was trying to do that work, and there was obstacles in her actually doing that work. And then when she decided to leave because she felt like, she's not going to have an income, but the information that she has to give to the public and helping them is more important than making the money.
yeah,
And then,
so we're
that's
going to
the,
need to figure out new modes of support for people, so that when the money system does collapse, we have other modes of support. And that support is going to be through food, growing it, getting nutrients, providing each other with personal services, uh, building health, building the wealth of health rather than the wealth of money. And so, if we can figure out different forms of storing our energy so that we're compensated by a balance, I don't have to make more than everyone else, but I don't need to make less than everyone else either. And the everyone else is a big problem too, because we're not comparing ourselves to each other. We're all individuals, and we all need to be able to take our individual paths to doing it. And right now, the compartmentalization of everything to keep people away from each other could actually be to our benefit in the long run, but it sure doesn't work in the short run, does it?
no. Mm-mm. Okay. So, is um, we're going to close now. So we're just going to tell everybody, hey, thanks for listening to the December 1st, 2019 weekly collab. And we hope you enjoy it. And also, we do have an email account if you want to email us, and that is thinkcolab. So thinkcolab at those emails come to me. So if you have any questions, also on our YouTube channel, if you go to the About page, everybody that is usually on the collab has a email address and places of contact. So and where you can find them. So you can go there, and anybody that you specifically want to talk to, you can do that. Or if you want to just send your email, a nice email, we don't do meanness or trolls. And I can actually bird dog that email to who it may belong to. So I can do that as well. So today we had Karen Possessky, the social worker ninja. She has a radio show too on Revolution Radio, Studio A. And then we've been talking to Dr. Lenny Thyme, and I'm Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and you can find me on Revolution Radio, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And then you're writing a new blog on mines, right? So can you tell people what the link is for that?
Yeah, it's the Mad Dr. Time. And I've been putting out thoughts of the day and writing a few essays. And I haven't gotten the hang of mine. I'm not real happy with the way that essays come out, and getting around is virtually impossible. But you can find me on Minds if you know how to get around on Minds. And I'm still looking for ways of bringing together a system where we can actually learn and teach simultaneously and discover the stuff that we don't know without having to incorporate the nonsense that we've been taught and do know until it comes to the right point to derive that nonsense. And once we've gotten to the point where we need the download, then getting a download allows us to correct all the flaws of the field. But it's really going to take people in their own fields doing their own work. And so anybody who is not doing their own work right now, today's an excellent day to get started. Do your own work and start developing things that you've actually thought about and put your time and effort into. And when we've all banked enough time and effort in our own fields, then we'll start talking and you'll really watch things take off. So thank you, Bridgette. It was a
Well,
good.
thank you. I love having these conversations because, it gets stuff out into the public that the public may not normally hear.
Yeah,
Could be shocking.
you and Karen did a great show on Friday night or Thursday night when you were called in to substitute.
Oh, the vagina monologues. That's what
Yeah,
they were laughingly calling us in the chat room. Oh, we loved your vagina monologues last night.
yeah, that was the whole conversation took off, and it was a great way of ending Thanksgiving evening.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was funny. And the funny part was that I don't know Jay, who's the host. He's a man, and his show's called like The Matrix, and I'm sure that it has I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's probably a very male show. And so it was so funny because, we started talking about healthcare and vaginas and birthing and all this other stuff. So it just happened, and we were laughing and giggling. And so we didn't mean him any harm. It's what happens, if somebody has to fill in for your show and we don't know what your topic is, we kind of have to just run with whatever topic is available.
Well, it was a good show, and I hope there's a recording of it for the archives.
Yep, there will be. Yeah, there will be as soon as we finish getting the archives straightened out, because we're moving them to kind of a different kind of website situation, and so we have to take the old ones, which requires a lot of bandwidth. So right now they're moving all the old servers to a place where we can get a lot of bandwidth, and then building the new website. And so once we have that up, then they can just punch out all of the archives. So the management said that they should have it done by January. So I'll have probably about 25 shows that I'll have to get up and out. But yeah, they'll all be there.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
I'll
All
talk
right.
to you later.
Have a great day. Bye.